I will never forget the day he came to live with us. My husband brought him back from a trip. We had been married for about 3 years. We had 2 children, and I was not happy. To my husband, he was something like a piece of furniture, always there, always in its place, something you learn not to notice. We lived in a small, remote town, almost forgotten, like it was disappearing. The first time I saw him, I felt my horror so sharply I thought I would scream. He was gloomy, sinister. He had large yellowish eyes, almost round, without eyelids, eyes that seemed to look straight through things and people. My unhappy life became pure torment. That very night he arrived, I begged my husband not to force me to endure his presence. I couldn't explain it, but he filled me with distrust and fear. "It's completely harmless," my husband said, watching me with cold indifference. "You'll get used to it. And if you don't, there's no convincing me to send it away." He stayed in our house. I wasn't the only one suffering. My children did too. So did Guadalupe, the woman who helped me with the chores. Even his little son. Everyone in the house felt fear of him. Only my husband seemed to enjoy having him there. From the first day, my husband assigned him the room at the corner. It was a large room, but always wet and dark. I never used it. It looked miserable, like it had been left to rot. Yet he seemed pleased with it. Since it was so dark, he would settle in, quiet and hidden. I slept until evening and never knew when he slept. I lost what little peace I used to have in that house. During the day, everything appeared normal. I always woke very early. I dressed the children, gave them breakfast, and kept them entertained while Guadalupe cleaned the house and went out to buy provisions. Our home was large, with a garden in the center, and rooms arranged around it. Between the rooms and the garden there were corridors that shielded us from the harsh rains and the wind that often blew through. With a house that big and a garden so well cared for, my morning work was exhausting. But I loved my garden. The corridors were covered with flowers that bloomed almost all year. I loved sitting there in the afternoons, sewing the children's clothes while the air smelled of honeysuckle and bougainvillea. In the garden I grew chrysanthemums, pansies, alpine plants, begonias, and heliotropes. While I watered the plants, the children would amuse themselves, searching for worms between the leaves. Sometimes they would sit for hours, quiet and very still, trying to catch the drops escaping from the old hose. But even when I was busy, I kept glancing, again and again, toward that corner room. I couldn't trust myself. Even while I slept through the day, the fear stayed alive in me. There were moments when, while I was preparing food, I would suddenly see his shadow fall across the wood stove. It felt like he was standing behind me. I would drop everything and run out of the kitchen screaming like a madwoman. Then he would return to his room as if nothing had happened. I think I ignored Guadalupe. I never approached her, and I never told her anything directly. I didn't even let myself confide in her fully. I became distant, cold, ashamed, furious, because every time I tried to understand what was happening, I only felt more hatred and dread. When I left that corner room, my true nightmare began. He was always in a small dining room, right in front of the door of my room. I didn't go out anymore. Sometimes, believing I was still asleep, I would go to the kitchen for the children's snack, and then I would discover him somewhere in the dining room's dark corners, half hidden beneath the curtains. "There he is," Guadalupe would cry out, desperate, without even being able to hold herself together. We never named him. We believed that if we gave him a name, we would force him to become real, to fully claim us. So we said only, "He's out. He's sleeping. There he is again." He ate very little, only 2 meals. One when he woke up at night, and another, perhaps, before going back to bed in the morning. Guadalupe carried the tray, and I can honestly say I sometimes threw it into the room. I did it because she suffered the same terror I did, and I couldn't bear to think of her feeding something that felt like a living curse. When the children went to bed, Guadalupe would take me to dinner in the room. I couldn't leave him alone, because he always might be awake, or might be about to wake. Once he was done with his few duties, Guadalupe would put his son to sleep, and then I would sit there alone, staring at my children's sleeping faces. The door to my room was always open, and I dared not lie down. I was afraid he would enter at any moment and attack us. But it wasn't possible to close the door. My husband came home very late. If he found the door closed, he might have wondered. He arrived late because, he claimed, he had a lot of work. I think there were other things that kept him busy too. One night I stayed awake until about 2 in the morning, hearing him outside. When I finally woke, I saw him standing next to my bed. He stared at me with that fixed, penetrating gaze. I jumped out of bed and knocked over the gasoline lamp I had left burning all night. In that town there was no electricity. Without light, I couldn't bear the idea of being trapped in darkness while he was free to move and enter my room. The lamp shattered on the brick floor. Gasoline spread quickly, and without Guadalupe coming running to my screams, the whole house might have burned. My husband didn't have time to listen. He barely cared what happened in the house. We only spoke about what mattered, because between us, affection had dried up a long time ago. There were no words left, only silence and fear. Guadalupe had gone out to buy provisions and left little Martin sleeping in a drawer. He slept there during the day. I went to check on him several times. He was quiet, peaceful, safe. It was near noon when I heard the little one cry, mixed with strange, terrible screams. When I ran into the room, I found him brutally hitting the child. I still don't know how I managed to pull Martin away. I don't know how I threw myself at him with a trap I found in my hand. I attacked him with every ounce of fury I had been holding inside for so long. I don't know if I hurt him badly, because I fell without even meaning to. When Guadalupe returned, she found me faint, and her son covered with bruises and bleeding from the blows. The pain on his body was matched by the horror on my own. Fortunately, the child didn't die and recovered soon. But I feared Guadalupe would leave. I feared she would be as trapped as I was, and then abandoned. And if she didn't run, it was because she was noble and brave. She truly loved the children and me. But that day something in her broke open. Inside her, hatred was born, hatred that demanded revenge. When I told her what had happened, I begged her to demand action from my husband. I argued, with trembling urgency, that we had to remove him. I said he could kill our children the way he had attacked Martin. "Every day you're becoming more hysterical," my husband snapped. "It's painful and depressing to see you like this. I've explained 1,000 times, he's an inoffensive being." Then I thought again about running away, from the house, from my husband, from all of it. But I had no money. The roads were far. Help felt impossible. Without friends or relatives, I felt as alone as an orphan. My children were terrified. They stopped playing in the garden. They clung to me constantly. When Guadalupe went to the market, I locked myself in my room with them. "This cannot go on," I told Guadalupe when she returned. "We have to do something. Soon." She answered, quietly, but her eyes burned with decision. "What can we do? We're alone," I said. "Yes," she replied, but with hatred. His eyes had that strange, glowing look again. And in that moment, I felt fear and something else too, hope, thin and dangerous. Our chance came when we least expected it. My husband left for the city to handle business. It would take about 20 days before he returned. I don't know whether the creature understood that my husband was gone, but that day it woke earlier than usual. It was already in front of my room. Guadalupe and her son slept in my room, and for the first time I was able to close the door. All night long, Guadalupe and I made plans. The children slept peacefully. From time to time, we heard him come to the door and beat it with fury, like a frantic animal trying to break through. The next day we served breakfast to the 3 children. Then, to keep them calm and to avoid disturbing our preparations, we locked them inside my room. Guadalupe and I had so much to do, and so little time, that we didn't even eat. Guadalupe cut several large, resistant boards. I searched for a hammer and nails. When everything was ready, we moved carefully. We reached the corner room without making a sound. The door was battered by the creature's insistence, scraped and rattled as if it were trying to escape. We held our breath, carried out the plan, and lowered the boards into place over the doorway. Then we locked the door with a key. Only then did we begin nailing the boards shut until the room was fully sealed. While we worked, thick drops of sweat streamed down our faces. There was no more noise then, no more movement, only the steady pounding outside, growing muffled by wood and distance, like a trapped storm. When it was finally done, Guadalupe and I embraced, crying like women who had lived too long in silence. The days that followed were terrible for the creature. It lived for many days with no air, no light, and no food. At first, it knocked and threw itself against the door. It screamed desperately. It rattled and strained. Neither Guadalupe nor I could eat or sleep. The sound was unbearable. Sometimes, we feared my husband would return before the room was finished sealed. That if he found it like that, he would never forgive what we had done. But the creature's resistance was great. It seemed to live for about 2 weeks. One day, there was no more sound. Not a single lament. Still, we waited 2 more days before opening the room. When my husband returned, we greeted him with the news. His companion was dead, suddenly, without warning, silenced forever by the boards we had hammered into place.